Welcome back to our study of John's epistles. In this final study, we will look at the last 7 verses of 3 John. John wrote this letter to a Christian named Gaius, a man of true integrity whose love for both the church and those outside the church is evident. As we discussed in the previous episode, many of the same themes John emphasized in his first letter are present in 3 John. The need to walk in truth, to live in a manner worthy of God, and to love our fellow Christians. And as we also noted last time, in an era when false teaching and false teachers proliferated, it's crucial for the church to love one another more. Let's pick up in verse 8. We therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers for the truth. In the first century church, it was common for evangelists and other brethren to visit different congregations on their travels. Paul set the example for this practice, taking men like Timothy, Titus, and Silas on his missionary journeys. When other concerns occupied Paul, he would send one of these men to deliver a letter, follow up on a previous letter, check on the well-being of a church, or reinforce the doctrine taught by Paul in previous visits. For example, he tells the Corinthians to expect a visit from Timothy in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 10 and 11. When Timothy comes, Paul says, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord as I am. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I am expecting him with the brothers. Timothy worked as an evangelist. He did the work of the Lord, and the church in Corinth was to receive him, see to his needs, listen to what he had to say, and send him on his way in peace. This was how the church was supposed to treat faithful men who labored in the gospel. And it's how Gaius treated such men. Gaius received his fellow Christians in love and sent them on their way with God's blessings. John says this is what we should do if we are all working together for the sake of the truth. But as John reveals in verse 9, only some Christians make the same choice. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. Therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds which he does, prating against us with malicious words. And not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church. Diotrephes would not allow the congregation to receive correspondence from the apostle John. Diotrephes spoke wicked nonsense against John and his companions, speaking with the intent to harm their reputations. Diotrephes also refused to receive fellow Christians and used excommunication to intimidate those in the church who wanted to receive the brethren. Essentially, Diotrephes rejected the apostle John, anyone associated with him, and anyone in the congregation who wanted to be associated with John. Who was this man, and what gave him the right to act this way? The Lord's plan for the church was for local congregations to be ruled by a body of elders, or what we call an eldership. Following the pattern established in Acts chapter 6, verses 1 through 6, the church chose men who met certain qualifications described in places like 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, and 1 Peter chapter 5. The elders saw to the spiritual needs of the church. They taught the church the doctrine of Christ and set an example of living consistently with it. They also protected the church from false teachers and false teaching. The title elder was used interchangeably with bishop, or sometimes translated overseer, and shepherd or pastor. All of these titles refer to the same role in the first century church. Unfortunately, as the first century ended, some congregations elevated one elder above the rest. At first, bishops were the head elder of elders over congregations. But in a few decades, one bishop ruled over several churches in a city. Eventually, they would rule over churches in a region. But to be clear, this was never the Lord's intention for the elders. The church was to be ruled by a body of elders who shared equal authority. Although we cannot be sure, Diotrephes may have perverted the office of the elder. Diotrephes loved to have the preeminence. Other translations say Diotrephes liked to put himself first, or liked to be first among them. He loved to be the head of all things, to rule and to lord his authority over others. Diotrephes appears to be an ambitious and arrogant man whose dominant personality harmed the church. It's possible Diotrephes was an elder who assumed too much authority, emerging as a prototype for the later development of church bishops. But we don't want to be guilty of reading too much into the text. At the very least, we can say Diotrephes' dominant personality stepped way beyond the authority any member of the church possessed. It's good for us to remember there are ways to hold such men accountable. Jesus outlines how to confront those who are sinning in Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17. Approach them in private, one-on-one, go to them privately with witnesses, and finally bring it before the church. Paul tells Timothy how to handle an elder who is sinning. 2 to 3 witnesses must make the accusation. If the allegations are accurate and the elder has sinned, Timothy the evangelist should rebuke the sinning elder. John intends to visit the church and rebuke Diotrephes for his grave sin. This is how it would be handled. In the meantime, he urges Gaius to shun Diotrephes' example and continue receiving faithful brethren. Let's move on to verse 11. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has a good testimony from all and from the truth itself. And we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. John fills his gospel account and his epistles with stark contrasts between right and wrong. He quotes Jesus in John chapter 3, verses 20 and 21. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. John returns to the theme of light and dark in 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. This is the message we have heard from him and proclaimed to you, that God is light and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him while we walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. In 1 John chapter 2, verse 4, John warns, whoever says, I know him, but does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. He continues in verse 10, whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. John fills his books with contrasts of light and dark, truth and lies, walking and stumbling, love and hate, eyesight and blindness. Diotrephes has engaged in evil behavior, and his allegiances are in question. Diotrephes refused correspondence from the apostle John. He turned away John's fellow workers who had a good reputation in the Christian community, and Diotrephes excommunicated brethren from the church who wanted to hear from these men. These are not the actions of a man who loves the truth and walks in the light. So John exposes Diotrephes and warns Gaius against following his example. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. John recommends that Gaius receive men like Demetrius. Like Gaius and Diotrephes, we don't know anything about Demetrius beyond what we find in this letter. We know that he is a man with a good reputation in the church, and John agrees with that reputation by offering his own approval. There are a few other things we can surmise. Demetrius was probably an itinerant evangelist like Timothy or Titus or Silas who visited different churches throughout this region. He was the type of man Gaius received in the past, treated well, and sent him on his way with God's blessings. Demetrius may have delivered this letter to Gaius on John's behalf, and John may have sent Demetrius to serve as an ally of Gaius, an advocate for the truth who could help Gaius stand against Diotrephes. Whatever the case, Demetrius is the kind of Christian man Gaius should receive, embrace, and imitate. John closes the letter by expressing his intention to visit soon. I had many things to write, but I do not wish to write to you with pen and ink. But I hope to see you shortly, and we shall speak face to face. Peace to you. Our friends greet you. Greet the friends by name. A lot is happening in the background of 3 John, and the apostle acknowledges that there was much more to say. But some things are better said in person, face to face. So John hopes to visit soon and have that conversation with Gaius. Until then, he wishes God's blessings of peace, greets Gaius on behalf of their mutual friends, and reminds Gaius one last time to remember those on the Lord's side.